and welcome back to a new live episode of Thirsty Thursday, an unscheduled Tuesday episode
Yes.
of Thirsty Thursday. Um, this was an impromptu decision to do this as a live. We were actually scheduled to do some planning for something new that's coming up,
Mhm.
and we decided to do it live. Right, Will? Welcome.
Yes. We thought this would be interesting for those of you right now in Q4 thinking of doing a year-end something, whether that be a report, a review, something with your audience, your people, your team. So, Susan, why don't you explain what we are in the midst of planning? Also, I think this is a really fun idea.
Mhm.
So I'm excited that we're doing this.
Yes, this is a really fun idea. So what we're doing is the Thirst Awards, or the Marketing Thirst Awards, whatever you want to call it. The idea came from the fact that was it in the spring of 2020, shortly after the pandemic, we started to do Thirsty Thursday, which was a
Hmm.
weekly roundup of the news headlines, the hits, the misses, and a lot of it we took from entertainment and what people were doing in their communication there, and that sort of seemed to resonate. But even before it really
Hmm.
resonated with anyone, we were having fun, right? And we really
Yeah.
enjoyed sort of like finding that. And I think a pet peeve for me was, like, I spend a fair amount of time reading marketing and business books, and I would definitely love them. That said, typically the examples that are in marketing and business books are all like, here's something from 2007 or 2012 or whatever,
Mhm.
which in my humble opinion is a bit outdated. And I like my examples sort of fresh and as it happens, and I think that's probably why we stuck with the thirst idea and spotting the stories that we are thirsty for like
Mhm.
pretty much a year and a half right now. So the Thirst Awards is, I think we have about 300 or so brand examples that we've looked at during the time, during the, what is it, like 60
Mhm.
odd episodes of Thirsty Thursday. And we are going to basically categorize them and pick the best. And because we don't want to do that on our own and keep it completely without any
Mhm.
specific outlines, we're going to get a panel together.
Yeah, exactly. Let's imagine this like a very, very, very poor man and woman's version of the Oscars, okay, folks? So it's going to be, we're going to come up with our categories, our thirst list categories. We're going to have actual nominees.
Yes.
We are going to ask you out there on social media to vote, the people on our email list to vote, and then we'll have a little ceremony where we actually.
Will, you've muted. The fun times of doing live planning. So you can come behind the scenes.
Okay, now, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, fabulous.
Oh, this is what it's called, first generation AirPods. They suck. Okay, so as I was saying, I don't know where you left off, but we're going to do it like a real show. Have nominations. We're going to decide on the categories. If you've been watching us, do not expect us to be holding these nominations to any kind of criteria other than it's stuff that we wanted to talk about, right? So,
Yes.
so
And the stuff that sort of made the headlines as well, right? Like made them
mhm,
effectively. It's like these
yeah,
things, people were interested in these stories, and that's why they've sort of made it to our
yeah,
list. And our job at hand is probably just to shortlist those 300
yeah.
something into some categories. So today's episode is obviously about planning that out. And to start with, I'm going to just outline some of the categories and some of the things that we want
Mhm,
to cover off. So we'll talk in a second a little bit about categories, and then we'll talk about how we're bringing in guest hosts. We're pretty passionate about
mhm,
talking about panels, and how
mhm,
panels of hosts and guest hosts are probably the best thing that you can do for your audio and video property.
mhm,
So we'll talk about the guest hosts we're thinking about and why it is that we're considering those people. Then we're going to go into the event format. Will already gave you a little bit of a peek into that, talking about how we're planning to make it interactive. But we'll just, and be aware, folks, that this is literally an on the fly planning session,
yeah.
and we don't actually know the absolute answers to some of this. This might change a bit, but we want you to know how it is that we go about the planning process, and
Yeah.
the fact that we typically start planning for something like this like a month, a little over a month ahead of time. So the event format, and then I think importantly, we'll take a minute to discuss the surprise and delight part of it. I think one of the things that we do well as a brand is to create some fun in our virtual events. We tend to keep them small as opposed to large scale webinars, and our claim to fame is the fact that on more than one occasion we've had very high attendance, including 100% attendance on virtual events. So we believe that it's the surprise and delight and sort of bringing people with you on that journey which creates that. So we'll talk a bit about that, and then lastly we'll talk about how, 5 weeks out, how we plan to sort of market this, like what are the channels that we'll use. Again, slight plot giveaway there. Like, we're doing this one as a podcast, so that we're going to obviously repurpose this into multiple things. So that's the shall we say the outline. So should we start with the categories, Will? Do you
yeah, one thing though I did want to say up front, even before that, the reason I love this idea, folks, is Susan and I talk a lot about budget, bandwidth, burnout, right? It's the end of the year. You're already planning for 2022, probably. Everyone's got a little burnout going on. To me, this was the perfect opportunity for us to do something where we get to repurpose all the hard work we've been doing this year. It's also fun, so that does help with the burnout, and involve our team and our people and the audience, the people who've watched us. They're going to get to vote as well. So, and I'm sure magically Susan will somehow turn this into a year-end report, maybe. But it's all about, this is like us living our repurposing, mantra to the fullest. So I just wanted to start with that, Susan, before we went into the categories, just to explain, look at what you've done all year, and then, repurposing that for something to do at the end of the year is a really, really great way to, cut back on extra bandwidth needed to produce something like a year-end report.
Yes.
Anyways, go ahead, Susan. So you were talking about some of the categories. Now, this is the fun part, the brainstorming. What categories are we going to have for nominated thirst topics in?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen with that.
Sure.
With the, what shall I say? I'm going to share my screen with you, which has the roundup blog post. And, straight away here, I think it's worth pointing out that we tend to do a fair bit of the repurposing. Like Will said, we practice what we preach quite effectively. And even along the way, we've done a few roundups with the stories that we've covered. We do it weekly in an email, which goes out. It has a bit more detail, and like a quick outline for those who probably don't want to watch a whole video, and they're probably looking to just quickly catch the headlines, right? So in this one, we love our funny headlines, don't we? So in this one, we talked about when we hit 200 stories, which was roughly at about episode 50, we did a roundup blog post, and in it we had a whole bunch of the ones that we spoke about. So if you look here, we tended to focus obviously on a lot of COVID related stories that were in the news. We focused on a lot about how people were moving from in restaurant dining to various things that they were doing in the shall we say in the takeaway space. Like people like Burger King and McDonald's showed up over and over again in our stories with some of the cool stuff that they were doing. So here's an example. So for example, we had Apple, we had vaccine hunters, Taco Bell, and then in the next one we talked about a lot of tone deafness, various inclusion boo-boos and such like. So if we had to start with categorizing, Will, and since this is a brainstorm, maybe one of the categories to focus on in keeping with our heritage is newsjacking. Should we say best newsjacking by a brand? Should we split that up into consumer and B2B? Because, business to business brands sometimes tends to feel like, we have to be straight and staid and boring. And we so disagree with that. There are some examples in our list. So what are you thinking?
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Because something that we find really delightful is when the big brands do go on Twitter and play with each other. Remember there was that monolith that appeared in the middle of the desert, and everybody was like, what is Utah structure? And then so many brands were going on, and someone turned it into like a McNugget. Someone turned it, like, the brands had fun with it and had fun with each other. And that happens over and over again. And I personally, I love that sort of stuff.
Sold. Category 1, best newsjacking, folks.
Yeah, there you go.
What are we thinking about the split up? Do we feel like it needs to be split up into B2B and B2C? Would Burger King automatically win it if we just had one category because it's just so much more prolific than others? What are we thinking?
I don't know. And where would we put like it's not really newsjacking, but it was newsjacking. Yeah, no, it was. Sorry, like the Kevin Perron Ottawa Public Health. That was a really fun planned moment in newsjacking / comedy. And we've talked about several. I think put down both for now, and then we can always just turn it into one if we don't have enough proper competition
to break it up. Okay, yeah. All right. So for right now, there you go. Category 1 is newsjacking, and we're probably going to split it into 2 categories or 2 awards. One for business to consumer, and one to for business to business. So that's the first one. What else were we thinking? A second category.
Well, I think we talk a lot about the ads that we see. We talk about ads that we love and ads that we think missed the mark. So we could do, the thirst, the ad hit and the advertising miss. I know just recently we talked about Annie Murphy and that hilarious commercial she did for birth control. We talked about that Celine Dion, that gum commercial. It's all coming back to me now when people were coming out of isolation from COVID. There's been some really funny, iconic ads this year. So
yes, and some hard-touching ones. There was the one from Amazon where they talked at the start of the pandemic, where they had the ballerina who was sort of performing, and the whole neighborhood was helping her perform. I think that was a good one. Last week with Lydia DiFrancesco, there was a Halloween ad from a cat food brand called Temptations about human flavored cat food, which we did not get, but we are informed by cat people that is a thing. Your cat will eat you if you die.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
The things we discover from our thirst stories is freaking awesome. So I'm into that. So ads, hits and misses. Here, can I ask you a question in this safe public space? If we give someone a miss award, is that mean? Should we be telling someone that they missed and they were bad? Should we have bad awards? I don't know.
That's true. We don't need to at all. But I do think on Thirsty Thursday, we do speak our mind when we think someone did miss. So, but that's a good point. Do you want to keep this purely positive, or do you want to also add a little Razzie to it? I guess, I don't know.
I don't know. I think we do tend to go in the direction of saying exactly what we think. So for now, again, let's keep it in. And obviously, we're going to go into who our guest hosts are going to be in a second. And a part of our role for them is to get them to feed into this process. So they may well have some input, which might help us make a more definitive sort of decision. So for now, folks, we've got the second category, which is advertising. And we're considering doing a hit and a miss. And we're going to confirm whether that miss is
I guess there doesn't need to be a hit or a miss for everything, but I feel if you're a big brand, you can deal with some criticism when it comes to having a miss. But we don't have to have hit or miss for everything. It could just be in some cases. Something I do think we of course should have, Susan, is maybe podcast power move of the year, or because we do have that section we talk about podcast wars, the podcast watch, what's going on in the world of podcasting. So of course I think we need at least 100% one more questions about that.
Yes, I definitely like that. I think, a couple of things to note there. Obviously, podcasting is the cornerstone of our business. And we, therefore, in Thirsty Thursday, we kick off each week. And this is a testament to sort of like how podcasting is going, is that pretty much every week there's a story. There's either a very cool new podcast that's launched, or one of the podcast bigwig firms are doing something interesting. There's an acquisition or a merger or feature or something that comes up every week. And so identifying some of the cool things that podcasters are doing out there that's entertaining would be, I think, a very good category. So podcast power move is category number 3. Then 4, what about here again? It's an opportunity for a hit or a miss. Like DEI. I feel like a lot of the Thirsty Thursday stories we focused on were, especially during obviously the pandemic, there was so much of crisis comms that went well or went poorly or hadn't at all been considered. So I don't know whether that's a crisis comms thing or a lack of inclusion.
You could do Susan. Again, I'm going negative here automatically. Sorry, so bear with me. But it could be the the Tone Deafness Award. Maybe a brand who was tone deaf, so we can have a little fun. And again, we'll punch up. We'll pick the big brands. It could be also the apology of the year, right? And you could look at it from both ways. People who've apologized right, and people who maybe have apologized not so right.
I like that.
That kind of ties
I like that. So that's like 2 categories again. So we're talking about apology of the year and tone deaf award of the year. And I think that punch up point that Will made is worth paying attention to for a second. In the book that's coming up, the other EQ about entertainment quotient, I talk a lot about, you know, making jokes can feel dangerous because you're like, oh, am I going to say the wrong thing or am I going to be inappropriate? And I feel like if you have a guiding principle of never punch down, you really want to think about punch up. And there's a bit of nuance to that. You can't just indiscriminately punch either. So deciding what is up and down in your particular circumstance, I think is important. So we've got 5 categories there so far.
Another one that you and I had spoke about before when we were first coming up with this fun idea was something to do with the billionaires. Like, we have to poke fun at the billionaires. They've been so front and center, especially with the space race, but they've done other crazy, good, and weird things this past year. So I think there needs to be an award about our bro billionaires, and kind of, I don't know what though, but we need to come up with an award about them, because we've talked a lot about stories involving those guys.
Do we feel like Elon's automatically going to win the crazy billionaire award?
I don't know. I can't even remember. We've talked so much about them, and remember Zuckerberg's in there too. Like, what? Yes. He's got to win something bad.
Crazy billionaire bro award. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Okay. What else are we thinking? Again, going back to our sort of list of things that we did.
I thought, you know, my love of TikTok, and we have talked a lot about TikTok, and I was thinking, like, for us, you know, we're not the Gen Z TikTokers. I'm like the 40-year-old TikToker, so it's almost like through my lens, what was the TikTok moment or story of the year? Like, there was, you know, when you think about during the pandemic, there was the baked feta trend. Like, I've never seen so many people on the trend and try it. Like, we somehow have to recognize that. Like, even we tried it.
We tried it. It's true.
Even when the Olympics were all locked down and we weren't getting those normal interviews in Olympic Village like we normally would because of COVID and everything, Olympic TikTok blew up huge. All these athletes, these Gen Z athletes, were TikToking away, and we learned more about the Olympians, what the Olympic Village was like, what the food was like. It was more entertaining than watching the network coverage itself. So I think there's some fun TikTok stuff we've talked about where we can blow up a TikTok moment of the year from a 40+ perspective.
Yes. the washed up aged
TikToker's
guide to the universe. Yeah, no, I think that's really true. That's a good category. So TikTok trend of the year.
You also, we did talk a lot about women in sport and mental health. So I don't know what that, we've talked a lot about Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles. We talked about the women at the Olympics who decided, or no, it was the handball team who decided not to wear bikini bottoms and got fined. The German Olympic team who decided they were going to wear full unitards. We called it the revenge of the unitard. And they weren't going to wear the little swimsuit. So I think there needs to be a category maybe on like the women in sport power move, mental health,
like
award.
Women rising kind of thing.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about that.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. So we have 8 categories so far. Should we go for a full 10? What do you think?
I think 10 is great. I'm trying to see what other notes I had made here, because there is a lot too. We could talk about, so something we talked a lot about, and this could even just be a poll, right? Or it could just be a yes or no and a vote. Clubhouse started this year. Clubhouse, was it a smash or a flop? Like, in your opinion, is this, like, I don't know, like, it's a year into Clubhouse or more, I don't know. And I don't talk about it anymore. I don't know if people do talk about it much anymore, but we could actually just do a barometer check on where people are at with Clubhouse. Or
yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Or it could be
What?
one of the things of like new things that happened this year that we were obsessed with. Like what wins that award?
I think so.
NFTs,
Maybe looking at
Clubhouse.
say that again, Will.
It could be like things that we heard about this year that we became quickly obsessed with. NFTs, Clubhouse. What else, guys? Everybody else watching out there. What else did we become obsessed with immediately this year? I'm sure something else.
Anything FOMO driven, I'm pretty sure. What else did we get obsessed with? Can't think of anything straight off, but yes, I like that idea of the best new or best sort of
Squid Game. I don't know.
Squid Game.
Phenomenon of the year.
Yes. Phenomenon. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leaves us with one more category to hit that 10.
Yeah.
And I'm running through the list again.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, as I look at this roundup, I'm thinking, ooh, our visuals have improved a lot, haven't they?
That's good. It's continuous improvement.
On Thirsty Thursday, our visuals have certainly gotten consistently better.
Here's 2, and so we can decide on the final 10 later. But quickly, one could be the copyright fail of the year.
Yes, intellectual property. Yes.
Yeah, we've talked about some intellectual property no-nos. My favorite was that Toronto-based company that fashion house stole their slogan, "Peg the Patriarchy," and put it on Cara Delevingne. That's just one of them, but it was funny as well. I know you've also been working on something to do with intellectual property
with Apple. Yeah, we talked about one of those things.
The other thing, Susan, I thought was, where's my little? Did we talk about the rebrand of the year?
I like rebrand. And the other thing that was coming to my mind was, I know you talked about phenomenon, and I don't know whether this fits in there, but movements like the Free Britney movement, or what was the other thing? Like there were a couple of movements that gathered a lot of momentum over the course of the year. So I like that. So that's movements, and then what was the other thing that you said?
I said rebrand as well.
Rebrand, yes.
Because we've seen some good rebrands, we've seen some lackluster rebrands, we've seen some. Why are they rebranding rebrands? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here again, this is just me being completely biased about this. I question it. Like at this time, like you could be putting your money into all kinds of things, and like automatically I'm like, if you rebranded, I've got a slightly frowny for you. So this award will be getting judged a lot by other panelists.
Did you actually, Susan, I don't even know if we talked about this one, but you know how CIBC, for those of you not in Canada, it's one of our major banks, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Did you see their rebrand where like I walk by a CIBC sign now and I'm like, is that Rogers Telecommunications? Is that CIBC? It's just like, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if we talked about this. I can't even remember.
We haven't yet talked about it. Yeah. So I think that one was questionable.
That was a lame rebrand. I'm sorry, CIBC.
All right. So that's the categories there, and that's taken a majority of our planning time. So now we're going to like go through really quickly what we were thinking about as we invite guest hosts. So I think we were planning to keep it manageable, to have about like 6 people in total, or maybe 7 people in total, including the 2 of us. So probably 5 guest hosts, 4 to 5 guest hosts. A couple of them we've already spoken to and had confirmations from. So we're gonna just tell you who we're looking at to co-host this with, and why. So the first of the guests and friend of Thirsty Thursday is Rohini Mukherjee. She's a PR maven and somebody who's on top of the news. Certainly one of the reporters that often send us little snippets and say, "Did you see this?" So she's the first person. She's my co-host on the ABC DEI podcast as well. So she will be one of our guests. Who else do we have on our?
Someone else who's guest hosted with me and you when we've both been away is Megan, our friend Megan O'Neill. Yes. So we have to. I don't know if we've asked her yet. So surprise, Megan, if you haven't heard. But we're thinking.
Hi, Megan. You're going to be one of our guests.
Yeah, she's always got a lot to say on pop culture. So I love when she weighs in on our topics.
She really does, and she can go into like what like many of us think. What were they thinking? And Megan probably has the answer to what were they thinking. with her mindset know-how. So that was the second person. In addition to that, again, we haven't asked yet, so we're asking publicly. Martin Waxman, who was my professor at University of Toronto and has been a frequent visitor on our various properties. And the reason that I'd like to ask him, and I'm hoping that he has time to contribute to this, is reputation management is his jam. And I think bringing in someone who brings expertise in sort of the commentary around, like, especially in some of those negative things that we were talking about, like some of the misses and some of the intellectual property drama and stuff, I'm thinking someone who can bring a specialty in reputation management.
Yep, for sure. Plus, he's funny. Yeah.
He's super funny. I love that. Yeah. He had some great stories he told us about various brands in Canada that are in our podcast episodes. Yeah. Who else was on our list?
Well, we were gonna ask our friend Andrea Henry as well, because she does love some juicy gossip. So
yes.
and she's a lawyer, and has a lot to say on a lot of issues, both marketing related, small business related, as well as like the latest housewives gossip. So yeah.
Yes, she did come on a special episode where we specifically talked about Black Widow and how the rights to the new movie, they were not really paying ScarJo what was agreed in terms of the profit sharing. And we also talked about the Real Housewives drama at the time. So yay, Andrea Henry. Again, she will be finding out from this podcast that we're thinking about her. And then who was the last?
I think that was, of the people that we've had on before. I know that we were also thinking of reaching out to some people not necessarily in our immediate universe. But I think those were the people that in our universe we were. So far, again, we're in the brainstorming phase here still, folks. So we're planning.
Right. Okay. So the event format. So let's get into the event format. And I think there's two parts to the event itself. And one of those is sort of like leading into the next topic, which is the marketing. But we will have a few things leading up to the event. The event itself is going to be on the 25th of November. And in keeping with the heritage, we're probably going to do this at live, obviously, on LinkedIn and anywhere else that we can. And what are you thinking about the time? Should we go back to our heritage of 4 p.m. or should we, be doing this in the morning? We do want to drink because this is the Thirst Awards. So what do we think?
That's true. If we wanted to lean into the award show theme, visually, prop wise, I think we should do it. Like, why not have fun and lean into the theme? So maybe everyone has a cocktail, like you said, maybe at least from its coat, to celebrate what we've been through, maybe just from the waist up, we make it look like we're at an award show.
Yes.
And maybe we have those actual award show cards, and the winner is, and you pull out the card and pull out the winner. We could really have fun with that theme in I think a fun way out.
All right. So the evening then. So maybe because it is like you said, an award show, it might have to be a bit later in the day. So we'll figure out the exact time and schedule that up. But I'm into the idea of evening. Maybe we talk about, so in terms of like the stuff that comes before, one of the things that we're going to do, as Will mentioned, is send out some, shall we say, like a questionnaire or a poll of some sort to get people to vote. Like, we've got an email list which is pretty active. It's small, it's tiny but mighty, we like to say. And we've got like social stuff that we do. In addition to that, I think there's a certain amount, and I say this often, Will, it's like there's a certain amount of pounding the streets that you have to do to get anyone to be interested in your stuff. Even if your stuff is free content, it's not like people are rushing into it and wanting to be a part of it. So I think having some pre-material in which we're getting people to vote. Once the categories, these 10 categories, I think we're going to have a few in each that we will identify with the co-hosts, and that's probably going to go out in the second week of November for people to sort of get their votes in.
Yep.
And then what about the surprise and delight? We talked about the cocktail. We talked about getting dressed a little bit, in so much as you can see it. Maybe we can do it standing up so people can see that we're wearing pants. Like, I don't know.
Pushing it. You're pushing it.
No, no, only the top. I don't know, no
Yeah,
shoulders.
right.
Something.
Yeah. I'm just gonna wear a bow tie and then like get down like this. Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so that's sort of like bringing the fun to it, and I feel like our as we get into what our marketing plan is, I feel like our tone of voice in our material tends to be quite casual, and we often talk about how email is one of those things that we lean into. And our email folks, just so you know, it's not like we sit down from scratch and start writing an email campaign. That's not at all how we work. Everything we send out by email is done. It's either something to do with our podcast or it's something to do with Thirsty Thursday or whatever. So I think maybe keeping it fun. So the marketing plan itself is that from now on out, we're going to start talking about this a little bit. We will be using email heavily. We're going to be talking to our networks. We will lean on our hosts as well, like the co-hosts themselves bring with them credibility and an audience, which will reflect on how our programming is received. The podcast, I think it's obvious, but here we go. This recording live in itself is going to be, a podcast episode that you're going to hear for next week. So essentially, I think the podcast has to be a big part of it. And then the last part, and maybe coming back to where we started from, and Will, you and I started this being like, what is our year-end report? Because every year for the last 4 or so years, we've had some type of like what everyone has a trend blog post, and we take it a little bit beyond just predicting a few trends and focus on some one thing, right? So in this case, the end product is probably going to be the Thirst Awards, which is in a book. Like, I don't know, like 20 excellent examples of entertaining marketing awarded by the industry or something.
Yeah, or literally, let's just write a report on how to throw a year-end award show.
It could easily become that, folks. We're not going to lie.
There you go.
It could easily become a primer on how to do that, how to have fun while doing that.
Yeah.
So there you go. We promised ourselves we'd be done with this session in 30 minutes. So we're probably at that point. That's our outline on how it is that. Thank you for coming with us behind the scenes and staying with us. That's our outline of how we're going to plan this. Thirst Awards, once again, November 25th. It will be live in whatever screen that you're scrolling. And we hope you can join us and make it super fun.